Boston hit 13 threes as White had 14 points. Tatum again draws the foul. Under 5 to go. Tatum, 31, 8 rebounds, 11 assists.
What a series. What a series of dominance. But the thing is, was Jayson Tatum robbed of the MVP? Some people think that he was. What do you think? I'd like to hear your comments. But before we do that, I've got some stats that I want to share with you to determine the possible outcome. Now, let's be real. Jaylen Brown was very consistent during the Eastern Conference Finals, which he was the MVP of the Eastern Conference. But what about this series, the championship between Dallas? Did he really earn that MVP status? Because we know Boston did lose that fourth game terribly, but they came back with vengeance that fifth game and just showed their continued dominance. So what was the difference in the ball game? To me, it was more team play.
Tatum, White, again. Boston hit 13 threes as White had 14 points.
Because if we notice, Luka is going to get the majority of the touches with Dallas. And of course, Kyrie, the ball usually goes through both of those guys most of the time. But when you look at Boston, everyone's engaged. Everyone's rebounding, playing defense. Everybody's scoring. It's not just more of a 1 or 2 man show. It's the team. And that's what I saw in Boston, the dominance they had compared to the Mavericks, which was team play. But getting back to the main question, did Jaylen Brown really earn the MVP in that final game, the final series? Let's be real. A lot of people were surprised that Jaylen got the MVP. And I must admit, I was too. Because the overall play of that series with the Mavericks, I thought Jayson edged them out. Even though it was close, no doubt about it. It was definitely close. But I think Jayson pulled it off. And I think the stats, the data that I'm going to share with you will probably most than likely show that. But regardless, hey, those guys are world champs and well deserved.
Dapped up players, assistants, and what have you, and the emotion on both sides evident as the confetti falls. Tatum with Sun Deuce. Al Horford, his first NBA championship. Jaylen Brown, the finals MVP. And Joe Mazzulla, a smile on his face. It's a serious cat. But the race is finished. The job is done.
But when it came down to the final as to the MVP, we can see how Jaylen could have gotten it because he did play very well throughout the entire game, throughout the entire series. But in the Mavericks championship series, I must give the nudge to Jayson Tatum. I'd like to hear your comments. What do you think? Why don't you leave me a comment below and tell me what your thoughts are about that? Because some folks felt that he got gypped, that he didn't really earn it. Because when we look at that game when they lost, what was that, the fourth game? You know, they both had terrible ball games. I think Jayson Tatum only had 15 points and Jaylen Brown only had 10. But then again, you also have to look at the final game, which is the game following that, which Tatum edged him out even more so. So we're going to go back from the beginning, from game 1 up to game 5 involving this series, and you decide for yourself as to who you thought the MVP should have been. Let's take a look at the stats. Let's look at game 1. It shows here that Brown scored 22 points and Tatum scored 16. Now you can see also White, Holiday, and Horford, they all got in on the action, including Porzingis, who scored 20 points. See, that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about team, a good balance. But getting back to Tatum and Brown, we can see here Brown also had 6 rebounds. Tatum had 11. Brown had 2 assists. Tatum had 5. Now, of course, turnovers, Brown had 2 and Tatum 6. But steals, Brown had 3, and he had 3 blocks, as well as Tatum had no steals and 1 block. So that was game 1 with the Mavericks. Now, looking at game 2, it shows here Holiday was the leading scorer of that game with 26 points. But we're going to focus on Brown and Tatum. And it shows here Brown had 21 points, Tatum had 18. Still very close in margin. You can see here offensive rebounds. Well, let's go rebounds. Brown had 4 and Tatum had 9. And assists, Brown had 7. Huge mark here. Tatum had 12. Now, of course, Brown had 6 turnovers and Tatum had only 3. Brown had 3 steals and Tatum had 1. Now, let's look at game 3. Tatum had 31 points and Brown had 30. Boy, you're talking about a close, tight race. And rebounds, Tatum had 6, Brown had 8. Assists, Tatum had 5, Brown 8. Turnovers, Tatum 2, Brown 3. Steals, Brown 1, Tatum 0. And of course, blocks, we had Tatum 0 and Brown 1. Now, this is the game where Dallas blew them out. Okay, they got too comfortable with a 3-game lead. And when they went back to Dallas, that second game in Dallas, they blew them out. And you can see here, Tatum had 15 points. They both had bad games that day. Tatum had 15 points. Brown had 10. And then, of course, when we look at the rebounds, Tatum had 5 rebounds. Brown had 1. Assists, Tatum 3, Brown 2. Turnovers, Tatum 3, Brown 2. Blocks, Tatum 2, Brown 0. So you can see in that loss, still Tatum had a much better game than Brown. Neither, of course, had good games that day, but Tatum got the nudge on that one, definitely. And then, of course, the final game that the championship was won. And you can see here, Tatum had 31 points and Brown had 21. 10-point, big difference there. And then, of course, rebounds, they were tied. Each had 8. But then here's the separation here. Tatum had 11 assists and Brown had 6. Turnovers, Tatum 2, Brown 1. Steals, they both had 2, and no one had blocks. But when I look at this, and based on, because the race was tight between those two as who would be MVP. But what I separate the difference is the last 2 ball games, which Tatum shows favorably. He separated himself from Brown in those last 2 ball games. So I would have to give the edge to Tatum as to the MVP. What do you think? Based on looking at the data with me, looking at the stats here, what do you think? Let's hear your comments. Robert Wilkins, aka Basketball Talk. Go ahead, leave me a comment, subscribe, share, do what you know we needs to be done to help share this information with others so that the algorithm can share my channel with other folks. And if you like this t-shirt and some other merch that I have, I'll leave a link of that in the description below. And you can go to that and, hey, take full advantage of it if you like. Thanks for watching. See you next time.